Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon. I know I said it the wrong way on purpose, ladies and gentlemen. We are here again on the Unapologetic Entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen. Man, it was a trip to get here and get to you guys today. First off, let me apologize for Friday, but we're going to make it up to you today. So I'm going to get right into it. I was actually at a conference. Drove up here 3 hours to have this man here, right here. And he's going to help me pronounce his name if I mess it up. You know, there is no scripts. We're going to go with it. It is pronounced. Wait. I just said Ini.
Yeah.
Etuk.
Etuk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I have Mr. Ini Etuk today here. Now, I met him at the 10X conference, Growth Conference in Vegas.
Yeah.
We hit it off. We were just having a regular conversation. We just bumped into each other. And the one thing that I could tell everybody about that experience is that being there, everybody's super friendly. It's not like walking in New York City. You know, you walk past, you say good morning, you're lucky you get a good morning back. Not there. You make eye contact, and that's like a handshake. So you're talking. Yeah. So I'm walking, and I bump into this man right after I bumped into Diana, which you guys remember from the last show. So I bump into him, and we start having a conversation. And for those of you that don't know, I have a little background in psychology. So it was just weird because I go to talk to this man. He said his name. I didn't hear it. I'm honest. At that time, I thought he just said something. I was like, okay. And I just got right into the conversation talking to him. But he started talking to me on a whole different spectrum. I'm talking about, if you're a green, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. This man's, his vocabulary, I was like, okay, is this guy a businessman or a doctor? What's going on? What did you get into? My GPS is rerouting. Where are we going? Okay, let's catch up. He's talking to my intellectual side. So we really got into a 15-minute, 20-minute conversation. And it was on a whole different level. And I come to find out that a lot of things about him. First of all, for those of you that know anything about fraternities, the man here is a Q. So you know that he knows about being persistent. He knows about following directions. Not only that, but he's also been in the military. Correct, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I'm currently in the reserves through my school, and then from there I transition into active duty status to do my job, as a captain within the Air Force.
Captain in the Air Force. All right, he has degrees in social work and psychology. Biggest part and why he's here today is because he works with trauma. He's worked with people that have trauma in the military, and he's worked with entrepreneurs. Not only that, he's also an entrepreneur. So speaking on all that, one of the things that we as entrepreneurs have that I think we take for granted, like one of the things we do is that most entrepreneurs I know have gone through some type of traumatic event in their lives that, doesn't allow them to progress in any entrepreneurship, one of the things that I think everybody can agree that's watching, and you too, Mr. Ini, is that one of the things we do is we always talk about mindset, right? And everybody's talking about mindset, shifting mindset. And I think that people don't really understand what that is. Well, we got somebody that deals with mindset here. And last time we talked about therapists really being involved with entrepreneurs and how that would help. And today I could pretty much say we got one. So, sir, thank you for coming onto the show. I know that was long-winded, but
No
I was
problem.
trying, and I got adrenaline rushing from me right now from driving from Miami all the way to Orlando to make it here on time to have the people listen to you. So,
Yes, sir. I
just to
appreciate
start
it.
out, I would like you to introduce yourself to the crowd, and just so you understand how this works.
Yeah.
You don't, obviously you know the truth. I never send you a question of what I'm going to ask you, so you're pretty much in the hot seat. We also got viewers that will ask some questions.
Yeah.
The last time I did this, I probably got the 3 questions before they started firing them away. So just get ready. We don't know what to expect. All right, my man. So please start by introducing yourself and let people know who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yeah, definitely. So my full name is Iniobong Etuk. It's of Nigerian origin, from the Ibibio tribe. It means God's timing. And so Ini is the first 3 letters of that. And so I typically go by Ini, and that's, kind of like how my friends and colleagues know me. It's just, more simple. As Leonardo stated, so I do have degrees in psychology and in social work. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology as well as a master's degree in clinical psychology. And then I got my, before getting this master's degree, in the psychology, I got a master's degree before that, which was in social work. However, the focus was clinical social work with a specialization in trauma. And that's because trauma is my area of interest. I think that a lot of things that people do, you can kind of explain or kind of derive that origin from a traumatic experience or background. But as Leonardo stated, currently I'm getting my PhD in clinical psychology. So I'm a doctoral candidate right there. What he stated as well is true. So I'm currently in the reserves for the Air Force as I complete this degree. And as I matriculate further upon that completion, I would transition into captain level status for treating patients in the military population. So why do I do what I do? Well, I think that there's a lot of need. I think that there are a lot of individuals that they're going through certain things, but they don't have like an understanding of the best way to get through that, or of the like kind of understanding what they're going through. They may say, oh, okay, for example, like I lost my job, and that's a big deal, but they may not truly understand what's happening inside their mind or inside their emotional heart, or what in their environment, and therefore they then make decisions that can potentially lead them to worse outcomes than positive outcomes. And I want to be the type of person that helps you or anyone get to that positive outcome to be better in life, rather than to essentially make, as we will call maladaptive kind of behaviors, which lead to bad outcomes. So
Hold on. Not all of us got degrees, and some of us cannot speak that. Was
yeah,
maladaptive? Please explain that. Just
yeah. So
to a
yeah,
question.
like I stated, we use that term maladaptive. Really, what it means is that you're using behaviors that hurt you rather than help you. And so the way that we look at that, you have adaptive and maladaptive behaviors. And so an adaptive behavior is basically seen through the type of outcome. Like all of these behaviors are based on the outcome that they present. So if there's a behavior that you're doing that contributes to the positive outcome of your life, either that be your health, like physically or mentally, whether it's like a goal that you're looking to get to, like a better job, or maybe you want to connect better with your friends or something like that. If you're doing behaviors that lead to those positive outcomes, we call them adaptive behaviors. Now when you start doing things that lead to negative outcomes, which would be like the deterioration of your health, again, mentally or physically, death, um, psychological kind of issues, whether it's bringing higher levels of stress, anxiety, depression, so on and so forth. We also look at like different things, like if your relationships with your peers start to break apart, like you're not building friendships, you're getting fired from your job, all these different types of things are occurring because of the behaviors that you're doing. We call those maladaptive behaviors. So you have good behaviors that lead to positive things, or bad behaviors that lead to negative things, and that's how they kind of work.
All right, all right. Well, I'm gonna fire off with my first question. Thanks for clearing that up, man, because
Yeah, definitely.
this is an important topic. I hope that people just watch tons of this replay because, like I said, mindset's so important in what we do that if we don't really get a hold of it. I mean, our last guest, Diana, which I know you know, and we'll speak about that shortly,
Yeah.
but she hit how, therapy. It's the first time I ever heard an entrepreneur like not only say it privately but publicly that
Hmm.
goes to a therapist because she needs it, to move on. So I want to ask you something as an entrepreneur, the
Yeah.
grind, the grind that most of us go through, especially at the beginning in when your business or your baby is just starting to walk, it can feel like it's endless. Especially when you're just jumping from a 9 to 5. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest mental health challenges that entrepreneurs face, especially from those that are in unserved communities, or from the hoods, as we some of us know it? Like
Yeah.
some of the things the biggest mental health challenges they go through.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest one is, I mean, in my opinion, would probably be anxiety. Anxiety can stem from a wide variety of things, but when you think about all of the different factors that are at play for underserved people, right? They have so much to worry about outside of their business, and now they're trying to make a business to provide. So like, this baby of which you called it, this is the thing that they're really hoping on, that will get them to that next level where they feel safe and secure and provided for. And the anxiety around that, there's a lot of fear. Anxiety is essentially rooted in fear. Well, that's one theoretical framework, but there's the fear of something, and for example, it could be the fear of not being able to succeed, the fear of, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, and what happens if it doesn't work out, because now I have nothing left. The fear of, what's going to happen to my children, what's going to happen to my mom, what's going to happen to me, the fear of, well, can I take this risk or not? Can I put all of my energy into this or not? And so anxiety is like a big thing. And then, we can also talk about stress in general. But another mental health challenge is outside of anxiety, fear, stress, would potentially just be depression, right? Like, you're dealing with so many different things at once in our societies, and that can weigh on individuals very differently. In our world of psychology, we talk about how you can build resilience. However, resilience is something that people don't necessarily understand, how there is one person that can be very resilient and then another person who's not, right? And they're not knowing, okay, like, what is the difference between this individual and that individual genetically? And so you can still build resilience, but that doesn't mean that the way that I handle something will be very different than the way that Leonardo is going to handle something. Right? We have different baselines of resilience. And so, a person like myself, for example, hypothetically, let's say I'm predisposed to mental health disorders, like I'm predisposed to depression. And, I take things in differently than Leonardo may. So I may be trying to build my business and I'm dealing with other battles that Leonardo may not be dealing with. You
Mm.
know, I may be having all this suppressed, traumatic background because of my adverse childhood experiences, and Leonardo maybe didn't have that, right? And so now I'm dealing with that internally, and that can lead to a depressive state. And then we can talk about other things that are a little bit more like genetically inclined, like bipolar or schizophrenia, or you
Oh,
know, all those
those
other
guys are
things. But
different. Yeah, I don't think those people are starting a business per se, but some of them might.
no,
But
they do. A lot, a lot of individuals, like just because we have to remember everybody is dealing with some level of mental health, right? Everyone, whether it doesn't matter what you're doing, every single human being has a mental sphere, and they're dealing with some type of problem within that. And so there may be people that have all kinds of disorders, whether they're diagnosed or undiagnosed, but they're still dealing with it. That doesn't mean that they're not going to go to work. That doesn't mean that they're not going to try to start a business. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be walking right next to you on the street. You know, we all have something that we're working on.
let me ask you a question. You did say something. You said two very important things there. One, you hit on anxiety, and you
Hmm.
said the anxiety comes from like it builds on this fear factor because in
Yeah.
all businesses, like just moving forward. I mean, when you join or be part of any organization, or if you just start a business, once you start receiving mentorship, one of the first things you hear is, fear. That you can't have fear. You can't have fear. Fear stands for false evidence appearing real. Like you hear all these things and preaching on it. And
Yeah.
now you're hitting about anxiety. Like I think more recent, I couldn't tell you how many years, but more recent now, people are really taking anxiety and depression as a real thing. I think probably
Yeah.
when I saw it really hitting really hard, you heard about it when I was in school, but during the pandemic, I seen a whole new thing on fear. What can someone do if they're going through this type of anxiety to if they feel they have this anxiety? Is it something they should like talk to somebody? What should they do? Like what's your first step? Because if we've been living with it all this time, we don't even know. What would be like a first step? Oh, and then we have a question on the screen, but what
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
a first step?
So, one thing that people don't like about like psychologists or mental health individuals is that very much so we say like it depends. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it depends on at what level the anxiety is crippling you or not crippling you. So if your levels of anxiety are very manageable, then you may not need to seek a therapist per se. Not to say that individuals don't need therapy, right? But we just talked about like underserved populations. So this stuff costs money, right? I advocate for individuals to go to therapy. Everyone I advocate should have an individual that they can talk to unapologetically without any type of bias, and to also help them kind of like learn about themselves better and bring out things to the forefront that maybe they're kind of trying to hide from themselves. However, let's use a circumstance where somebody is legitimately afraid of making a big decision, right? Like because we're
Mm,
talking about business. So I need to make a decision. Am I going to spend money to you know um, you know put forth energy towards this thing for my business or not, right? And I'm afraid of the outcome or whatever, right? In that situation, the biggest thing really is to analyze, and a lot of people don't have this skill, but however, we want to develop skills with individuals, but you want to analyze what's causing the fear in that moment, right? What is the root of this fear, you know, and why is it showing up for me in this sense? And then you want to align, non-emotional and logical facts with your feelings, right? So you have your feelings on one side. I feel XYZ things, but this is the quote unquote facts of my situation, right? You can do a pros and cons list. You can do like, where am I at right now? What occurred for me to get to this point where I need to make this decision? And then at the end of the day, what this truly calls for is a level of courage. And I love the definition of courage. Is honestly one of my favorite words. And so courage essentially means bravery in the face of fear. So you
mm.
have to have bravery while the thing that you're afraid of is right there. You need to have that level of bravery to be able to say, I'm going to make this decision and live with it and do my best or not. And what happens is the more that we take an avoidant type of response to whatever the fear is, the more we kind of wire our brains to do that. So we're going to say, well, I'm afraid, I'm going to avoid this thing, and I'm going to keep doing that, because your brain doesn't, your brain and your body doesn't want you to deal with fear. Like, it doesn't want to feel fear. Fear doesn't feel good. You know, it's not like when you're afraid of something, you're like, yes, this is the greatest, you know, day of my life. Like, no, like you're like, oh my God, like, I don't want to have to deal with this thing right now. So your typical response would be to kind of not have to deal with it, but you have to tackle it head on. Now, if it's getting to this level where anxiety is literally stopping you from being able to do your job, it's keeping you up at night, it's impeding your health, and it's messing up your state of mind, then I would say that's when you want to go seek out like a psychologist. You want to seek out a psychologist and say, hey, I've been feeling these things, I want to do an assessment, I want to get better. Maybe I want to, I don't know if I warrant a diagnosis or not, but I've been dealing with this stuff. And so you can seek out a psychologist by, you can go on a listing on psychologytoday.com, or you can, check with your insurance. If you have insurance, you can check with them to see what mental health providers are under their plan. Or you can reach out just through Google, like clinical psychologists in my area, or anxiety specialists in my area, and so on and so forth.
So when it becomes paralyzing is when you should if it becomes paralyzing, keeping you up at night, that causes other unhealthy situations with you, that's when you should really start seeking help. That's what I got. Am I correct?
So yes and no. So the reason I say yes and no is because if it doesn't need to get to the point to where it is super detrimental to yourself. It's when you start to notice that these types of things may occur.
Got it.
That's when you need to start seeking professional help. Or when others around you start noticing that there's something off with how you're operating, that's when you start needing to seek like a professional help, like that level of assistance. However, like we talk about like the working well, and that those are essentially individuals that may not qualify for a DSM. The DSM is what we use to diagnose individuals. So they may not qualify for a diagnosis, but they need or they want a therapist. They want a psychologist to just help them optimize themselves. And in that case, you can always seek out someone that is like focused in your area. You don't have to seek out, for example, a clinical psychologist, because a clinical psychologist is expensive.
You said that with a laugh.
So,
Well,
yeah.
let me say hi to some of our people here. We got Marvin. What's going on? Alimnish, how you doing? I see that Merch is here. Takira, I saw. Let me see. I see Miss Luna. We got a lot of people just watching over here. So I got a question on the board from Mr. Mark Tirolia, coach.
Yeah.
You actually met him too.
Okay.
Is it true you have to deal with your child version trauma in order to be successful?
That depends on how you define success. There's a lot of individuals that have never worked on themselves a day in their life, and they're rich. They're making bank. However, if you're talking about what I would consider being the best version of yourself, which is to truly understand and know yourself, know why you're doing what you're doing, and to work on yourself to make better decisions for not just you, but everyone around you. This is something that Leonardo and I talked about when we met at 10X, which was essentially the domino effect of you influence everyone around you. And because you have some level of impact around them, towards them, they then impact others, and so on and so on and so on. So typically, there are many, many, many theories in psychology that essentially state that the core of who you are was started during your childhood and during your upbringing. And so if you cannot make sense of those things, if you cannot understand the impact of those things to who you are now, you may never truly understand yourself or why you're exhibiting some of the behaviors that you're exhibiting. So if you do want to become a better version of yourself, I definitely recommend sitting down either with a psychologist or a specialist in this area, um, or even if you just want to do it by yourself, right? Like you want to do some like self-reflective type of situation where you sit and you think like, okay, like what was my upbringing really like? What happened to me, that I did like or that I did not like? What were the types of things that kind of shaped how I think about the world today? you know
Mm.
and then why do I hold on to those beliefs, right? Like challenging yourself is very important.
It's a
you
belief
know
system. It's your
yeah,
belief system. Okay.
exactly. So challenging your belief system and yourself is important, not in the sense that you need to just like flip flop, but more in the sense that you're taking time to understand yourself and to make meaning of all the beliefs that you have. Because one of the biggest things that we do in our therapy is that we bring some of these deeply rooted beliefs up to the forefront of a person's attention. And a lot of individuals have never gone so deep to really understand what their core rooted belief is. We have this theory and this treatment model, which is called cognitive behavioral therapy. And basically, the essence of that is that your thoughts and your beliefs fuel your behavior. But these thoughts and beliefs that you have, they're not always so at the forefront of your mind. So sometimes it takes work for us to figure out, what are these
You got
and
to
where did they
dig.
come from? And
Hmm.
usually they come from somewhere in your childhood, typically. Either that or, like, in my opinion, usually it's childhood or trauma. Trauma
Oh,
is a great like indicator of a belief. Something happens to you that was traumatic. Very quickly, we make some decisions about the world, and we're like, this is why this is this, and
yeah.
it's because
Black
of
and white.
your
It becomes
experience.
law. It becomes law in
Exactly.
your head. I get it.
Exactly.
We got a question from a Lemnish, an RN. She
Yeah.
says, "What professional would be appropriate to see?" Because
Yeah.
I think everybody's like, "Oh, a psychologist, therapist, a counselor, a social worker." Like, what can you categorize where you should be if this? Like, if
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
need
And this is just my
medication, you need
opinion.
this.
Let me preface this by saying this is my opinion. However, I've been on multiple spectrums of this. So you want to deal with counselors are they're specific in their nature, right? So like each counselor typically has a focus. Now, obviously, there are anomalies to this, but like typically, when you're going out to get a degree, or when you're going out to get like your certification, when it comes to a counselor, it's typically in a specific area. So you can go and see those individuals, and they don't necessarily deal with the highest levels of disorders. Okay, so that they're kind of like at a more like working well, like I said, what we called it. They're more at
Surface
that
level.
type of level.
Surface level.
Yeah, they're dealing with more surface level issues. Now, when you want to go see like a social worker, like again, there are clinical social workers. These are individuals that can do therapy, and they are also individuals that will deal with more mid-level issues. Some of them also deal with like higher level disorders depending on their work environment. However, the clinical social worker, what they cannot do and what a clinical psychologist can do is that the clinical social worker cannot assess and diagnose you. That's not within their description.
Mm.
They're not trained to do that. They're not trained to give you a psychological assessment and then diagnose you based on those tests and assessments. The only professional that is able to do that is a clinical psychologist. They are trained to do that. That is the only professional that is trained to do that. And so while because of insurance reasons and stuff like that, clinical and social workers, for example, they may give you they may do like a brief level of an assessment to kind of figure out what's going on. Sometimes they have to put in codes for insurance, but they're not doing a complete psychological assessment. And they're not giving you like tests, like they're not doing like IQ assessments or things like that. So now the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is essentially one is a medical doctor and the other one is a doctor of your mind. So the medical doctor has a more physician, big pharma, big medicine type of training, and they will give you, pharmaceuticals, like they'll give you like prescriptions and things like that. Now, a clinical psychologist in nature, while some states kind of are allowing for them to prescribe medicine if they go further and do other schooling and stuff, but the clinical psychologist is trained to assess, diagnose, and treat psychological disorders. And they're the only ones that do so without giving you, a medicine type of level treatment. They're not going to give you prescriptions that are pharmaceutical in nature. And so usually what I recommend is that if you're having a problem and you're trying to get assessed, you need to get assessed from a clinical psychologist, because that is literally their job. That is what they are trained to do. Then the psychologist, allow for the psychologist to say that you need a pharmaceutical treatment. Because what's happening today is that a lot of individuals are skipping and going straight to the psychiatrist, and you're taking medicine that you may not actually have to take at that time. So like, like studies have shown that medicine alone, when it comes to like psychology, is not going to cure you. It's not necessarily the treatment that is going to get you back. Instead, they say that the best level of treatment for those that do need, a pharmaceutical kind of treatment is that you combine the medicine with therapy. So like you're doing both at the same time, so that you can then get to your goal and that you can come off the medicine. Because the medicine, psychological psych meds are changing the chemistry of your brain. That's what they do.
Oh, wow.
Because what's happening with psychology, we're looking at hormonal discharges. We're looking at, whether synapses are firing the right way. We're looking at whether certain, levels of, for example, like dopamine, if it's traveling where it needs to go, if enough is getting from one place to the next, and all of this stuff is happening in your brain. So when you start taking psychiatric medicine, you are changing the format of your brain. That's what you're doing. And when people are dependent on that, not to say that there aren't those that need it, there are, but when individuals who may not need that in the same way as others are taking that type of medication, then your brain creates a dependence. It's like the law of adaptability, or a habituation, I believe what it is. Like your brain will start to adapt to what you're giving it.
So you become an addict.
Or I wouldn't say an addict per se, because that's a different level. That's a different disorder in and of itself, but you become dependent. Your brain becomes dependent on that. And you might start seeing withdrawals or things like that, like an addict may seem, but it's a bit different. But yeah, I would say you want to go the route of non-pharmaceutical first and see how that works for you, and then go to a pharmaceutical treatment. Now, in some cases, you will definitely need a medicine. You may, in some cases, depending on how severe it is. But then you also want to do the work. It's the same thing with business. This is why I love psychology. Psychology is one of the only fields where you are forced to do the work. No one can do the work for you. Same thing with business. I mean, in business, like you had Diana on here last week. Diana loves to tell me, Either you do the time, you spend the time and you do the work yourself, or you pay for somebody to spend the time and do it themselves. Now, in psychology, you cannot do that, right? Because you can't pay somebody else to do it for you. You have to do it,
If you
right?
want to be better. Yeah.
Yeah, if you the psychologist can only give you the tool. You have to do it. And that's what's messing people up today. A lot of people don't want to do work. They want to skip the process and they think they're going to get better. No, you're not going to get better, or you're not going to get to your goal, whether it's business or whatever. You got to put in the work,
I
you
love
know?
it. Ooh, I love it. I love it. It's true. In order to be better, you got to do it yourself. I have another question here for you. Oh
Yeah,
man, the comments are coming in. We got Diana just said, well, she said, and speaking of her, and she said, people are just reacting to the world around them instead of having ownership and making conscious decisions in their behaviors.
that's true.
So it's just right
She
there.
she she made it so Diana. I feel like I tell her all the time that she wants to be me so bad, but but she wants to be me so bad.
Oh, you
Oh my
just
God.
started something.
But what I love to tell her is and she can vouch for this. I say one of the craziest things about people today, the biggest issue in humanity, in my opinion, today, is that individuals are not thinking; they're reacting.
Oh,
Reacting is not the same as thinking, and that goes back to trauma, right? When you have a trauma background, your brain is taught to react to survive. Alarms are ringing in your brain and you are reacting. Fight or flight responses. You're like, what do I need to do? What has worked for me? What keeps me alive? What keeps me safe? What keeps me where I need to be? How do I deal with this situation? Well, this has worked for me in the past. This is what I'm going to do now, regardless of if the fear is truly there or not. That's just how you're going to operate. And they're
that's a
not thinking.
quotable. That's a quotable. That's a
Yeah.
quotable. I like
And
that.
they're not thinking. And the reason they're not thinking is because of this aspect of trauma that a lot of individuals don't understand. Trauma, like an exaggerated trauma response that continues to occur, disrupts your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is right here on your brain, and that is the thing that is in the prefrontal cortex is what's in charge of essentially executive function, which is like critical thinking skills. And
Hmm.
so if you cannot critically think, then how are you going to make decisions in life? If your critical thinking, tool is messed up, how are you going to do that at the most effective level? And so people are not actually thinking with their prefrontal cortex because it's damaged, or it may be morphed or tailored into another type of mode, like someone said, survival mode, but it's not at a level of peace. And so because you're not at a level of peace, you're not thinking anymore, you're reacting. And that's why people go out here and do all the crazy stuff they do now. You're like, why did he do that? Because he's not thinking.
He's
He
reacting.
reacted.
That makes so much sense, man. Oh man, this is getting deep, guys. We're getting deep in the mind. I got one for you. Why
Yep.
do so many high achievers feel like prioritizing their mental health makes them look weak? And how can
Mhm.
they reframe the narrative? Like it does, to be honest with you, I think it has a negative connotation. Honestly, like if you're talking to somebody, you're getting to know them, and you know, in the conversation is like, oh yeah, I go to therapy 3 times a week.
Yeah.
You get that kind of reaction. Why is that? And how can we change that belief system? Because I'm telling you, I know it was shocking when Diana said she went to therapy because I kept hearing about it. And
Yeah.
I started hearing more chiming about it, but now in a positive light. So how do you change people's mindset on that?
Well, one is with education, right? I mean, you have to educate individuals about what they're going into and what the outcome is. I think the other thing is, kind of stemming off of what I just said, the outcome, right? Like if the outcome is to make you better, and sometimes, again, I'm gonna say that again, sometimes for some business-minded individuals, they don't care about being better, they care about money, right? So then if you tell them like, hey, by doing this you'll be in a better position to make more money, then they might be more open to, doing what they need to do.
So incentive, you got to give it an
Yeah, you have to incentivize,
Mhm.
this process. However, I would say that, a lot of individuals, to your point, like mental health has been a very stigmatized, field for a very, very long time. And, some folks don't really even believe that it's real. It's like it's crazy, right? Because they don't see it necessarily. And the worst thing in the field of mental health is to see your mental health. By the time that we see your mental health, there's a big problem,
Mm.
right? Like if someone has anxiety, but it's low level anxiety, we may not see it all the time. If you have high level anxiety, that means that your anxiety is so bad that it has come out to be expressed. That's a big deal. So a lot of individuals stigmatize this thing, and it gets to a point where people, they're not working on themselves, they're not doing the stuff that they needed to do, and so now, it gets bad. And unfortunately, we have folks that maybe become, like you said, dependent, or addicts to medication, or they commit suicide, and things of that nature. But then, like Diana just wrote here, it's 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 interesting with high achievers, because it's twofold. You have individuals who have always been good at something their whole life, potentially, and now they don't know how to not do that. So that's all they want to do, and people praise them for that. So they don't know anything outside of being at that level, and they don't know how to deal with not meeting the standard. So that's one aspect. And so they don't want the backlash, because there's a lot of backlash for a person who's a high achiever when they don't hit their marks. Like it could be parental, it could be, from your job, it can be from your spouse. They may have their own internal beliefs about what they're supposed to be doing, and then they come down on themselves hard. But then, people will validate and very much so follow the advice from mentors and from coaches and from pastors and from like self-help people on TikTok and from the pop psychologist on Instagram. And like they're doing all these things, but that's because those fields are not attached with someone giving you a diagnosis that something is wrong with you.
Mm.
You see what
Mm.
I mean? So like
Ooh,
those in,
you
in
gotta
those
unpack this.
fields,
Yes, sir.
in those fields, they're not diagnosing you with anything. Like for example, even with like a medical professional, like a physician, sometimes they may say that you have like a cold or a flu, like they diagnose you with something, but they're like, hey, we can fix it. Boom, right there. They give you a piece of medicine, and they're like, well, you're cured. You have a virus. Here, take this, and then you're good. So like people are not. It doesn't linger with them. But a psychologist will diagnose you with something, and then now that messes with individuals' identity. They're
Mm.
like, whoa, like this is me. I am anxious. You know, I have a personality disorder, so I am just not normal anymore. So there's that stigma they keep with them. And we're also like, as mental health professionals, we're trying to tell you like, hey, first off, your diagnosis is not who you are. you know it's just something that we have to work on right now. you know you don't have to be forever anxious. You don't have to fit into the criteria of a personality disorder all the time. You we can learn about ourselves and get better. And then
Find the
if
triggers. You can find the triggers, and that way
yeah,
you know how to
yeah.
react.
But if you were to ask me my opinion, like, again, like when you go to a psychologist, it could be daunting because again, these are not things that you can see. When you have a broken arm and you go to a doctor and they go, okay, your arm is broken. You're like, yeah, I saw it. You know, I could see my arm is broken. But when you think that you're okay and you go to a psychologist and they tell you, I think that you have depression, you're gonna be like, what are you talking about? Me be depressed? What do you mean? I'm happy. I'm chilling. Because now it's like this, they're taking it as though it's their identity. It's like, dude, we're not saying that you, Leonardo, is the same or equivalent to depression. No, we're saying that you have these symptoms. The symptoms are causing these issues in your day-to-day life, and we need to give you some skills, and maybe in severe cases, medication to help you get back to being copacetic. You know what I mean? Or to get back to being, able to handle those scenarios with a variety of skills that are not going to allow you to get back into the state of mind in which you were once in. It's a very daunting thing to have someone who is not you tell you about your mind.
Wow, man! Look, man. We're at 5:50. I'm gonna go a little longer. We're gonna go past time. If you got the time,
Yeah,
I got the 2 questions through my whole list. I got another one here. We're definitely coming for a part 2 because I think the mind is it's something we really need to understand. And that statement you said, you are not what your diagnosis is. That's not you. That's something. You understand?
It's so interesting that we do that, right? Because if someone was to diagnose someone with cancer, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you're cancer."
No, but when it comes to the mind, there's a whole different story. You almost get offended.
Because identity is rooted within your mind. It's rooted within your beliefs. So when we start, coming towards that, people get a little bit, they get taken aback a bit, So.
Well, we got a question here from Marvin. How does being a psychologist influence your mental health, emotional well-being, and professional dynamics? Okay, Marvin.
Yeah. So I wanna just make sure everybody knows that I'm not a psychologist just yet, because I don't want any problems with the board when I go to get my license. I don't want any problems with the board. But I do have like these years of experience with the education and the practicums and all of those things that I'm doing. And so what happens honestly is that it's funny. I would say that when I became a psychologist, when I became a doctoral candidate student, let me say it that way, and we started practicing these psychological traits, it opened my scope a lot to understanding, just how things work, and how people are operating, and what I need to do in order to be the best type of version of myself. Now, when you are going through the process of being like in the school for learning and doing all of these things, it's a lot, just because there's so many things happening at one time, right? Like you have so many responsibilities to the educational part of your school, and then also to the clinical part. And so you're trying to build all these skills and juggle all these things at once. And so they try to tell you to have good self-care, but a lot of mental health professionals, and this is one thing I will say, please, like, give grace to your mental health professionals or any medical professional, because the workload is a lot. The number of professionals are very minimal, and it takes a toll on you. To answer your question a little bit more directly, we have this thing that's called transference. So there's transference and countertransference, and that is the term. Transference is the term that we're using when a psychologist is taking on the pain and the struggle and the worry and basically everything that is being projected onto us. We take that on ourselves from our clients. And so you definitely have to have a good skill set and a good mental fortitude to be able to be like, I'm going to compartmentalize this. I'm going to dissociate from this. I'm going to do different things and activities that help me to relax and to help me to stay mentally strong. Professionally, I think it's fun. Personally, when people find out that I'm in the field of psychology, because everybody says, "Oh, look, you're analyzing me right now," and I'm like, "No."
I was going to say this would be interesting, just so you guys have some background. I'll say it now. This is the other half of Diana. So could you imagine that conversation? If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go back, watch the last episode, and then imagine what that's like.
Yeah, people are like, oh, you're analyzing me, and oh my goodness, like
Do you do
let me
that?
not
Do you
talk to you the
analyze
same
people?
way, and this, that,
Do
and the
you
next thing.
analyze people when they're speaking to you? Like, does it
Not
naturally
really,
happen?
man. I mean, so for example, Leonardo and I talked about this again. You know, when we were at 10x, you get trained and you get ingrained to notice certain things, but I'm not actively analyzing anyone. You know, I don't want to be a psychologist when I'm not supposed to. You know, like that's not my aim. Like it takes a lot of mental work for me to sit there and have to analyze you and let you talk, you know, and figure out like where's this guy coming from. You know, like that's not what we do. I just think that it's funny. Personally, like I said, some people may not like it. I just think it's funny, you know, because it just shows me how, you know, how much people are lacking in understanding of what a clinical psychologist actually is. The clinical psychologist is the closest to a medical doctor that you can get in the field of psychology that is not a medical doctor. So like they literally are like we're like you're too up there. Like I'm not trying to sit here and analyze you all day. Like that's not what we do. But then I would say the good part about it, though, is that in order to be, for example, a clinical psychologist, in order to have that license, you have to have a doctoral degree. So, like when individuals find out that it's like, oh, like you're getting your PhD, like you're kind of like an intellectual, that's a good like ego boost, I guess, here and there, because there's only 2% of the entire world's population that have any type of doctoral level degree, you know. And you know, I know for me, like I'm a multiracial male that is aiming to be a licensed psychologist in America, you know. And so I also want to be a prescribing psychologist. So after this, you know, I would pursue that. And so I would be in like the 0.01%,
Man, look, I
you
gotta
know.
give it up
So
to you, man.
so
I gotta give it up, man.
so I'm like, it's a good feeling, but you know, that's not to like you know, you have your people that want to boast and want to throw that in your face all the time and stuff, but I'm not like that, you know. Like for me, I really just chill because the type of work, like Leonardo said, I want to work with trauma. The type of work that I'm going to be doing, you know, people are coming to me with like legitimate like life rocking stories, you know. I can't have the time to just, you know, analyze everyone on my day to day.
Oh man, I'm gonna lead it. I'm gonna drive us because we are gonna go to a second part because this is deep, man. You guys really you really touched parts that I'm sure people have questions and they just gotta chop this down because you really gave a lot there. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are confused. What are you currently doing as far as an entrepreneur in your field? Like, I know you and Diana are working on something, but you know, we are gonna have right by the end. I'm gonna say shameless plug, but can you tell us what is that? Because I'm sure it has to do with both y'all gifts.
Yeah. So so what I'm working on currently, and what we just started, was essentially a business that we hope to grow to one day potentially even have like different level like conferences or conventions. But the essence of what it is that so I'm very big into animated like productions, essentially.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I enjoy a lot is anime, which is like a Japanese style cartoon, you know, and so on and so forth. Um, but what I noticed was that, you know, these animes are presenting a lot of mental health skills or mental health situations, things that people can use to better their everyday life. And anime is also a very big area of our culture right now, like pop culture, that is like spearheaded up. Like there's way more people that are becoming openly interested in this, you know, realm. And so what I'm doing is based on like I love to give props to where props are due. So based on the idea of my lovely girlfriend Diana, who thought that I would be a great person to spearhead this train of thought, we basically said we're going to make a platform that ties in mental health with an anime. And so to just give a good example, I told Diana, because she also likes to watch anime too. So I told Diana that growing up, the show that really built in a lot of character traits that I have, or like kind of belief systems that I have, came from like Naruto. So I was like, let's go watch Naruto so you can understand me just as a better person, right? And so she's been on that journey of watching that, but she told me, because I prefaced her that by saying that, this show is going to highlight different character traits that I embody, different belief systems that I embody, different like types of ways of living that I showcase in my everyday life. She started looking for those. And as she started watching the show, she's like, "Oh wow. Like this level of perseverance, this level of loyalty to your friends, this level of having, a motto or a mantra and sticking to it, this level of resilience, how to deal with obstacles, how to work hard towards a goal, you know those
No.
are the types of things that, like anime shows you. And so we're going to basically have this platform where we pull those things out of the anime and kind of teach people, okay, like you can do this like this, or you can learn this like this, you can um, um, see from this scene this, that, and the next thing. And then we'll have people engaging and so on. And like I said, hopefully, a year or two from now or whatever, we can have a conference where people can showcase their love for anime, but also, kind of optimize their everyday life as well.
Oh man, man, I can't wait. Can't wait. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more question from Diana here. How does it work in your everyday life? I think that was the last topic you were
Oh,
talking
my
about.
everyday interactions.
Yeah, your everyday interactions.
Yeah. So I can briefly talk about that. I mean, first thing first, am I frozen?
No, you freeze every now and then. There's a glitch, but you're good. You're good.
Okay, just making sure because it's frozen on my end. But anyway,
You're good. You're good. We
um,
seen the hand gestures and everything. We're good. We're good.
all right, perfect. But yes, how does psychology work in everyday interactions? Psychology, just having a basic understanding of psychology will just help your life a lot. One, because you're going to understand to just let go. That's the first thing, right? Things happen to you, things happen to people. People are going to do things to you. You learn to understand why things are occurring. And then you're able to just say, is this worth my reaction? Or is the reaction I'm going to give going to benefit me or hurt me? Right? So psychology gives you that perspective. Number two, it helps you be more aware and understanding of who you're dealing with. So you want to make sure that you surround yourself with people that are going to uplift you, get you, towards the goal, that are going to be supportive, that are going to be encouraging, that have good morals, that have, all the positive things. You start to really pick that out of people, because psychology will also help you see through the BS, right? You'll be able to match. One of the biggest thing about psychology is that the definition is the scientific study of the mind as shown through behavior. So your behavior is going to show me whether what you're saying is right. And so now I get to basically tell, is this person a liar and are they faking, or are they about what they said they're about, right? And so that's another aspect of it right there. Number three, and this is when you start learning actual psychological skills, not just things that you can do for yourself to help your mental health, but for example, I learned how to diagnostically interview, which is basically me questioning you to figure out, what the problem is, but it teaches me how to talk. So I know situations and where.
Oh, we lost him. He's got to come back. We're gonna wait a second. He was on to something. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying on. I'm gonna give him an opportunity to get back on because he was just on to something. Oh, here he comes. Hold on, hold on. I got him. I got him. Hold on. Let me get him in here. Oh man, that was good. That was good. Hold on. Hold on.
Yeah, see, I
Bring
was
it back.
wondering.
Rewind.
It was frozen on my side, so I was wondering like what was going on. But either way,
Come back with that. That was good right there. You were
yeah,
you were on something.
what I was saying about the diagnostic interviewing is just that it teaches you how to relate to another person based off of what you're receiving from them. If they're closed off, you know how to talk to be able to get your answer. If they're not, if they're sharing too much, you know how to listen to hear about what you're trying to listen to. For example, like sometimes my girlfriend and I, we even use like a skill for communication. If like a situation is difficult to talk about, we can use a psychological skill, a communication skill, to just talk about that situation, and there you go. It helps you in that regard too. So psychology is very important. Like just having that basic understanding of how to relate to other people, and how to. I think the biggest thing is what I said in the beginning about like you have a general understanding of the things that are occurring with other people. So it makes you a bit more empathetic
Mm.
because you don't know what's going on in their life. And because you're in the field of psychology, at least for me, I get exposed to statistics all the time, negative statistics. And so you start to learn how much people are actually going through, and you start to wonder, like, what is this person going through?
Mm.
You know, and how should I deal with them? You know, in a way, like, this is not to say be a pushover or anything like that, but like, how can I showcase kindness to this person who may be going through, a tough time, you know, and that really helps a lot.
Wow, wow, wow. Oh man, listen. I love this topic. Like I said, I'm definitely gonna have you on again. This was great. Again, I only got three questions before I got crazy, but it's okay. Okay, I got a whole arsenal. I want to thank you for coming on and gracing us with your presence, man.
Yes,
But
sir.
before we go, shameless plug, man. Let them know where they can find you, what they can look for. Shameless plug, man. This for you.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter. I think that's the official way to say that.
Yeah.
But all of my platforms are going to be Talk Jutsu Official. So Talk TALK. Jutsu is JUTSU. And then the word official. I think on X it's Talk Jutsu OFF, just because it wouldn't let you
Do
have
the
the
whole
whole
word.
the whole word
Make
there. But
sure that when you're done, after you say all this, go on to this and place it in the comments. All right, so people
yeah,
know.
yeah, definitely. So Talk Jutsu Official, like I said, it's a brand new platform that we're launching. I'm gonna have some content on there. Today I'm gonna be launching some content on there. And so like I stated, it's gonna be a great place for those who like anime or just like watch anime, who like animation in general, who like, mental health and skills and things like that, to be able to learn some skills and to see some of these things played out in your favorite shows. And if you have friends and things like that who enjoy this type of content, or you think that they could benefit from learning some psychological skills on their own, just basic everyday things, then oh yeah, Diana posted it right there, so that's perfect. So then yeah, you can just bring them to that site, and I'm gonna try to make it as engaging as possible, for an Instagram or something like that, so that people can definitely tell me like what types of things they need to kind of learn and hear from, what types of shows they want to see. Like, I'm watching this show, does this show have lessons in it that I can learn from? Like, yeah, I'll go watch it and go through it with you. um, and then I'm gonna have a podcast as well. So we're gonna do a podcast about it, where I'm just talking to you about these shows, talking to you about these skills, and talking to you about how important it is, and how well they depict it within the show, and stuff like that. And so
Man, it's been thank you for gracing us, man. Like I said, we'll be back again, Mr. Ini. I got it. Ini, right?
Ini, yeah,
Ini, got it. Ini
yeah,
Etuk.
Ini, yep, Ini Etuk.
Etuk. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Ini Etuk. I appreciate you coming over here and just talking to us about the mind is a powerful thing, man. Especially if you're an entrepreneur. If you don't got this right, none of it's gonna work. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I want to thank you for your time. Guys, all of you that showed up, all the questions, thank you for your participation. Go back, watch this, share it. I mean, this is just the beginning. We're just talking about one piece of the mind. We're going to get back into it again. He promised me he'll do a part 2. If not, I'll talk to Diana and she'll make him do it. Because I'm going to tell you before I sign us off, I was talking to Diana and she told me that you guys were going to do some kind of presentation at one time, but you guys do this whole form prior to doing this just to know whose role is what, because you're both pretty dominant when you speak. Like you both control the space. So how do you balance it? And I think it's important. But I know if we get into that, we're going to go a whole half hour because I saw the sheet.
I got it.
I'm going to leave that for next time. I just gave everybody a teaser because it doesn't have to only be in partnerships where you're together, just in partnerships.
Yeah.
Like if I'm sharing the platform with one of the agents, one of my business partners or my mentor, some people it's natural, for some people it's not. So this form that she sent me, I saw so many ways to use it. And I was like, you know what, we're going to talk about that. And I looked at the time and I said, you know what, I'm going to tease people about it. Let them know next time you come. Maybe I can have you and Diana come on and you guys can talk about it. That'll be a great thing too. So we'll keep in touch. We'll keep in touch for that.
Definitely. I mean, I just want to say, like, based on what you were saying, the last thing is that, a lot of stuff is a lot easier than people think that it can be. It takes work, but it's easier than you think. But you can always get better. Always. It's just a skill that you need. Sometimes you just need a skill and you need somebody to teach it to you. But you can get to wherever you need to be. That form helps us a lot, and whatever you need, whether it's in business, wherever it's in life or whatever, once you get that skill, skyrocket.
Oh, man. Thank you for that, guys. It's been, she put it up here, roles and responsibilities are required for any partnership. Absolutely. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to talk to you today.
Same, likewise.
Close off. Be blessed.
Be blessed.